Welcome to the Matt Murphy Show. He is doing something. There are many rumors about Matt Murphy's whereabouts.
He's in Tunica gambling with Jay St. Clair and playing golf.
I heard hot yoga. Lots of things. Big if true, you know? He's having fun. He needs a break because periodically when folks like Chris and Brian and Dan and Matt, they talk a lot and they have a lot of conversations with you guys. And so I'm glad that they get a break. And then that means I get to come in and join you guys. This is awesome. I was with you guys Monday. Glad to be here today. Members Nutrition Super Text line 615-737-9986. It is a beautiful day. A lot of fun. Lots going on. And I want you to be a part. Whatever you guys want to talk about, I've got some ideas. A couple things I want to get started with. The usuals. First, I want to give a shout out to Gary with Williamson County Parks and Recreation. Had a Nolensville Youth Athletics board meeting. We're talking with the county, and Gary comes up to me and says, are you Cameron Smith? Are you the Cameron Smith? And I'm like, oh, no. Am I going to get hit? Like, what's going to happen? Who is this Cameron Smith? Because my name's David Cameron Smith. It might as well be an alias. And so I'm like, who is he confused me with, and is he going to hurt me? And the answer is no. He was like, man, I hear you on the radio, and like I knew I heard your voice, and that was you. And I just wanted to say, that's awesome. That is so much fun. I know with Matt and other folks on the station, we are real people. We are here for you. And whenever you see us or hear us in the community, say hi, engage. We want to know what's going on with you. For me, I have a lot of other hats that I wear in addition to talk radio. Again, when you see me or want to talk or have an idea, just grab me and say, hey, you got a minute? And the answer is usually yes. And if not, we'll find a time, because what you have to say dictates the content that I create. And so when I'm on the editorial board for the Tunicaing and we're trying to get the pulse of where people are, I need to know where people are. I need to know what you think, what matters to you. That's what's important to me. And so, Gary, I really appreciate that. Anybody else? Again, I mentioned Matt calls it Conservative Island over at the Tunicaing. I prefer to think of it as they're looking for a broader reach. But I am a columnist over at the Tunicaing, which has papers across the state, Knox News Sentinel, Memphis Commercial Appeal. So I write for those. I write for Advanced Local down in Alabama. And so you can see my stuff all over the place. I do fill-in work here. I'm a partner in a media company that we've talked about on the air frequently. We have The Ballad of Davy Crockett. I got some great news for all of y'all that have been following this. It is now the #1 Western on Amazon. So yes.
Don't forget, you also write law for the Tennessee General Assembly.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in the show today. You guys, by caring about what's going on in your legislature, enable folks like Super Talk, the Tennessee, and other folks to help push legislators to do things that you want to see happen. And I got a great example of that we'll talk about. I'm also over at Thanks in Franklin, where they grow business with gratitude. So I appreciate them being flexible and let me come over and talk with you guys. That I say all those things almost every time I'm on the air, just so you guys know what shapes my opinions. I'm an attorney with a background in politics. I've ran the House Republican Policy Committee. I'm a nerd. I want you to preferably say nice things and have a good conversation. But if you feel a need to yell at me, it's okay too.
All of that made you sound like a great person until you said attorney, and then it's like, ugh.
I know. That's the reason I mentioned that one last. Couple of other things. I love this time of year. It's like we're going outside. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. And it makes me think about the football field. I know for the Alabama fans out there, you got the 8A game this weekend. People are wondering what that team's going to be like. All you volunteers out there thinking about, okay, what kind of team we're going to have this year? Are we going to take Alabama to the woodshed? Are we going to throw our uprights in the river again? I don't know. But when I start thinking about this stuff, my passion, my favorite thing to coach in the world is youth football. And, I love youth sports. And so anytime you guys want to throw that out there, want to talk about that, I appreciate it. I'm still looking for children of unusual size to come and be linemen in Nolensville for the new Stars tackle football program. We are excited, maybe exuberant, in fact, So come out, send me a text message, and we'll get those kids off those video games and outside. We'll talk about that at maybe the end of the show if we have some time about I father 4 boys. We're a therapeutic foster family. We do a lot of things that we're trying to figure out parenting. And I know we talk a lot about politics, but I also care deeply about raising young men and helping them be contributing members of society in a culture that, frankly, is kind of given up on them. So we'll talk about that too. A couple of column pieces I wanted to get to. I'll start with what Bell was talking about with the Jack Johnson, William Slater legislation that guarantees access for parents who find themselves interacting with the juvenile justice system. My foster son got picked up 5 days after he'd been in my house. I didn't know the guy, basically. And I needed access because I knew he was scared. I knew what was going on. Williamson County Juvenile Detention Center said, nope, can't speak to him for 24 hours. And that is insane. And so you guys, we talked about it on the air. I guess this was the end of last year, and going into the legislative sessions, we started talking about it here on the Matt Murphy Show. I started writing about it over at the Tunicaing. Jack Johnson picked it up, Senate Majority Leader, and said, hey, this seems like a no-brainer. We should be able to do this and figure this out. He introduced legislation. I helped him kind of think through some of the nuanced aspects of it, and that has passed the Senate. It's scheduled this week to pass out of the House. It passed, I believe, unanimously out of the Senate. So we're rocking and rolling. It's going to end up on Governor Lee's desk, and I'm thrilled about it.
You sort of answered my question, but if it passed unanimously, obviously you didn't have any Democrats that were giving you any pushback. But has anybody come out of the woodwork and go, what are you doing? This is a terrible idea.
No, they haven't.
Nobody at all?
No. And I think this is the kind of thing where it's common sense. Hey, it's better for the kids, even when they're in big trouble, to have access to a parent quickly so that we can have discussions about how do we get back on the right path? How do we move forward in a positive way? And the next step, what we'll try next session, is making sure that kids can't waive their rights. Because if kids can waive their rights prior to talking to a parent or an attorney, that's a huge problem, because we want kids to trust law enforcement. We want them to engage, but it's not that they're not smart enough. They're not mature enough to recognize if they get Mirandized that they need to shut up.
Well, especially when you're a kid or a teenager, your life experience isn't enough for you to know, is this the appropriate time to talk, or should I just be quiet and wait for my mother, my father, my lawyer, whatever?
Right. And I hate this this is one of the toughest things for law enforcement, right? Is you need to have positive relationships with the community where they trust you, where they want to work with you, where you're protecting and serving, and we're having good relationships. I have that in Nolensville with the police. Because we're foster parents, we've had some situations where the police got called to our house, and they show up and they help, and they're awesome. So I'm very, very pro law enforcement, but that relationship dynamic changes when you get arrested. At that point, that law enforcement is acting on behalf of the city or state or whomever, and they are in an adversarial position to the individual who's been arrested. And an adult has the capacity to understand that. Kids, it's really tough, especially, I'll use my kids as an example. We know a lot of the Nolensville police by name. And so in the event that they arrested them, they're still going to talk to those folks because they trust them. And to say, okay, this is a different thing. Let's make sure parents or an attorney can advise these kids, I think is the next step, is something we need to do. But the legislature's been responsive. It's been awesome. And we overcame some logistics concerns because there's some of these facilities that have tons and tons of kids that get picked up, and the logistics of doing phone calls and visits and stuff is difficult. And we figured out how to, work through that. And so everybody's been on board, and it's great.
Well, on top of that, they still have a right to an attorney, and they should not be put in a position where they make their attorney's job more difficult because of ignorance.
Yes. And look, that happens all the time. There's a lot of folks adults too, but adults, their brains are developed. if they're not smart enough to figure out when someone says what you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, then guess what? That's on them. But a kid, it's a little bit of a different scenario. And I think that just working through these things and understanding the juvenile justice process is different. And we're trying to get these kids on the right path before they get in a situation as an adult where, we're incarcerating them, where essentially the taxpayer gets to pay for their mistakes because they've got to fund them in jail. That's not what any of us want. And so it's just a process that I care about. I never in a million years thought I would interact with the juvenile justice system, and I did. And frankly, a lot of the people were very professional. The judge is great. There wasn't an issue there. It was bad policies, things that people had gotten away with, because a lot of folks are ashamed when their kid gets picked up. They don't want to talk about it. And so they just go along with whatever. That's sort of not in my DNA.
What was their original reason for telling you weren't allowed to see your son?
It was public safety. They just said public safety. And I'm like, there's a kid in a cell. What's unsafe? What could possibly happen? And the individual at the juvenile justice center, was basically condescending. Like, you're upset. And I was not. I shouldn't say that. I was upset, but I also know the law, and I knew what they had to give me. And they cited a policy and refused to give me a copy of the policy. Ultimately, I made a sunshine request, got the policy, and was like, this is ridiculous.
It's always amazing when a government agent thinks that policy trumps law.
Yeah, and it was, well, we made this policy. Well, this is inconsistent with these other areas of law, right? This is our policy. Well, I get it. They got a job to do.
But their policy does not trump the law. You can make policy
Right.
all day long, but if the legislature said that ain't going to work, it's not legal.
Yeah, I told Justine yesterday that I'll probably, once this thing becomes law, print off a copy and hand deliver it and just say, hey, I just want to make sure that your policies are now consistent with current Tennessee law. And that's a heavily credit to you guys as listeners who have said, when we care about issues, that carries clout. When you guys are talking about it, when you guys are engaging and giving feedback like you did on this one, that is used to actually change things. So don't think for a minute that this is just us jawing for hours on end. Yeah, we have fun. Yeah, we talk about whatever's going on in the culture and that type of things. But I've talked to Matt and other folks, like, we want to pick projects that matter to you guys and see if we can get legislators to understand the folks are serious. We don't want to mess around. We want to be left alone by the government. We want the government to get out of the way of our businesses and let us do what we need to do. And, sometimes when we're having a debate in the legislature over whether you can marry your cousin or not, it's not exactly inspiring. So this is a big deal. It's a credit to you guys. And I really, really, really appreciate that. I see on the super text line, can you speak to DCS overstepping boundaries against parents?
I have a question before you switch. So the portion of the bill that I was really excited about, where they can't waive their rights without talking to their parents or a lawyer, that got put off.
So we never included it in the initial one because
I take that very personally.
I'm sure you do.
Thanks.
But it has not been left off the radar. Like, this is one where we'll absolutely go for it next session and say, hey, this is a very specific thing. One of the mistakes that I think a lot of legislators make is they put a lot of different things in a bill. Well, they can hide stuff there, but it also gives people reason to oppose it, right? And so when I say something very specifically like minors should not be able to waive their rights prior to contact with a parent, guardian, or a legal counsel, that's real simple. That bill is like 4 lines.
Yeah.
And then if you oppose it, I'm like, you think the state should be able to use what a kid says against them, and you think that's a good idea, that we wouldn't want to guarantee that they had contact with a parent or attorney before that happened. And that's a real hard argument to make, and I want them to make it.
Okay.
Because, and I've told Senator Johnson this, and this is where folks, they get really upset. They're like, this is hardball politics. There's no crying in politics. Guess what? If the people want something and we're going to drive it and you want to oppose it, I'm going to try to run over you politically.
I'm pretty sure that was baseball.
Yeah. Well, there's no crying in baseball either. But this idea that we should like gently request that our legislators do things we want and just beg them as supplicants is not what we do in America. It is, hey, this is the right thing to do. You need to get on board. And if you decide you want to like get in the way, then I'm going to let people know you're doing that. I'm going to make it real hard on you to either oppose me or get reelected.
And is Jack going to sponsor that bill next session?
We're going to talk about that to see who might end up carrying it. But if you're a legislator out there that says, hey, I like what Jack and William did, and you care about this issue, reach out to me and we'll figure it out. I mean, we want to work with everybody to carry good things that people care about. And if you guys as listeners have ideas and say, these are things that are important to me, this is what I'm seeing, let me know. We want to write about it and talk about it because we want to change things for the better.
This is the end of this session, correct?
Yes, we're coming up on the end.
But I mean, session's 2 years, and this is the end of that. Okay.
What I'm talking about is, when they're actually over at the Capitol doing legislation, because the way it works, they have basically a bill cutoff. You got to introduce all your bills before a certain date.
Got it.
And then it requires jumping through hoops to consider stuff. And so what we did is we introduced a placeholder, and then we amended it, ran it through committee, did that. But because of the dynamics of the way the legislature works, next legislative session, when they're considering legislation again, we'll find sponsors, we'll run it, we'll do it. And, this is great, folks. This is how it's supposed to work. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll move on to some other topics. But thank you for that. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. Couple things that I saw on the Members Nutrition Super Text line. John says that nobody cares about Alabama football except the ones still hanging onto the bandwagon. The ride has stopped. John, I know you're a Vol for life, but I think that's wishful thinking. And I guess we'll find out. So, we'll have a chance to discuss this very week. I love my Vol fans out there, but come on. This is what makes college football worth engaging, is these kind of rivalries. So I want Tennessee to be good. I want them to be excellent, in fact, because when they're good and we're good, then it's fun. The idea of any Vol fan being like, I'd like a broken, dilapidated Alabama to roll into Neyland Stadium and just crush them for fun. You're probably not a big fan of college football because you want good on good. That makes it a lot of fun. A couple other things. Why do I keep saying Matt Murphy's show when he's just out gambling and having fun? Because my friend Matt Murphy has worked really hard to build this show and engage his audience and listeners, and I want to support him in that endeavor because I am here to fill in. I love the team here. I want to help out, but this is Matt's show, and I want to respect that and do a good job. It's not just for you guys I want to do a good job. It's for him. He's worked really hard. He cares about you guys. This is his brand, his show, and I like to say that. So nobody makes me. I just do. And because of that, the Freestyle Friday calls are wide open. You can call in on 615-737-9986, and we will talk about whatever you want to talk about. I've got a agenda for the show so that I don't just sit here and say, I want to keep rolling. But if you want to talk about something else, it's Friday, man. We are having fun, and you bring it. Lindsay wants to call in. I'm waiting, Lindsay. I'm waiting for that call so that we can talk about what you want to talk about. Otherwise, we'll keep rolling. And the big one, we just talked about the parental rights and juvenile justice. Thank you for all your help on moving that sort of stuff. I've got several different topics. PFAS, forever chemicals in the water. It's something that the EPA's got a new rule. I want to know what y'all think about that. So many tax statistics and things to talk about. Some of y'all have forgotten that your taxes are due Monday. You can get on that extension or you can get on your taxes. Either way, they're coming for your money. So that's a thing. I had a wild conversation in the hot tub at the Lifetime Gym where you can find me throughout the week working out about the nearness of a civil war, that it seems like it's inevitable that we're going to start shooting each other. And I've got a piece that's about to drop on that to talk about. And then, wanted to let you guys know how my family's doing, what we're dealing with, because I know a lot of you guys are dealing with a lot of the same things, parenting, kids. I've got teenagers, middle schoolers, elementary school. I mean, y'all love this. We periodically do respite care for foster families where it's basically you have to be approved by the state to watch a foster kid when a family goes out of town and that kid's not able to go for whatever reason. Well, we had a young man at our house and there were so many boys just running around. When he got to our home, he's like, is this a group home? And he just assumed that these boys could not all possibly be our biological kids. So we probably run in a group home in the middle of Nolensville. So that's kind of how things are for us, and I'm happy to talk about it. Lindsay got called out, and Lindsay called in. Lindsay, tell me what's going on.
Hey, Cameron. I know it's not a free-for-all Friday, but I do have a few bees in my bonnet concerning a Matt Murphy, who's not here to defend himself, and a Mac Morey, who is. About a week ago, these boys said they do not own an FM radio.
Really?
And I think they should be severely chastised of all the examples in the world.
I don't think Mac even knows what that is.
You own an FM radio, Cameron?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you do. Well, Murphy's off getting his hands filthy black from all that nasty Tunica money, so He can't defend himself.
Well, I understand that. And Mac doesn't know what an FM radio is. Like, he's never seen
How
one.
can you not have one with batteries for when the power goes out? How can everyone not have one, including radio talk show hosts?
I have an emergency one that you turn a crank to power it, and so you don't even need batteries. Because, I need Super Talk 99.7 even in an emergency with no power or batteries.
Of course. I think they should be in trouble.
All right.
You have a good show.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'll definitely get after them. We've got to take a break, but when we come back...
Real quickly, yeah. I don't have an FM radio, and it's because if there's an emergency, somebody's going to ask me to work, so I don't want to be able to know that the emergency is happening.
Yeah, but you're also going to be here. So, the radio that you would use to listen to yourself as you do... Okay. We got to take a break. This is Super Talk 99.7. That sounds like a really intense video game level right there. I mean,
Yeah, it's boss mode.
boss mode. Definitely. Well, John in Manchester heard the call to call in and talk about what he wants to talk about, and he wants to talk about taxes. John, what you got?
Well, I'm a business owner.
Okay.
And, of course, with business, you know, it's up and down all year long. You don't know what you got coming in, what you got going out.
Right.
Because of the business we're in. But I was kind enough, filed my taxes early, sent them a check. They had access to my account, so they helped themselves to almost $10,000. And they were kind enough to send me a letter right back. Now, this was back in February, but I got a letter back about 2 weeks after I filed, and they took their money out. Said I underestimated my tax by $355, which is fine, except they penalized me for $355 for filing my taxes wrong. Welcome to our real world.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I've got a way to figure it out. I'm going to sell a business, get out of it, sit at the house, and just loaf. That's what I'm planning on doing. And this will be the third time I'm going to retire.
Well, happy third retirement, but you shouldn't let the IRS put you there.
Yeah, well, they're the ones. I've just had enough of it, and you know, because it's hard to estimate your taxes with the income up and down. You know, you pay your pre-tax, and it's hard to figure it out which way it's going to go. But I missed it by $355. But they were kind enough to penalize me for the exact same amount I owed.
Yeah,
and I did pay that, and I paid it early. You know, and I've already gave them a check and said, "Here, have a good day." But it's just crazy that this is what's going on with the taxes.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree with.
Now I don't know if I'm covering part of Hunter's share. You know, I may be boosting his up a little bit. You know, but that's the way. I mean, that's what business owners deal with. I mean, we just, you know, you try to do the right thing, but you know, paying it in early. I mean, I got it filed in February, but I was kind enough to get a letter right back in March. The second week of March, let me know, hey, you underestimated it. We want $355 more and the $355 penalty. So it matched it equally.
Wow.
So, you know, I just stood there and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And you know, I mean, they could have waived the penalty off. Say, hey, you underestimated by $355. Send us a check. Well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. If I owe it, I owe it.
Right.
But, you know, and I paid it early. But nope, can't have that. Let's go ahead and hold you down one more time. Wow. And it's a minimal amount. I mean, it's a minimal amount.
Well, it's amazing how
$1 or $100,000.
It's amazing how they can get your $355, but then we see something like what's happening with Hunter Biden, and it's like,
right?
Wait a minute. It seems almost like there's a different standard of review for certain people.
Well, that's what the evil yellow-haired man is why I'm going to vote that way this year. So,
yeah,
you know. I mean, he understands taxes and everything else. And if these people don't realize what's going on in this world, they need to step out and just go somewhere else because it's crazy. The whole world has lost their ever-loving minds.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the call, John. Thank you very much. And I agree with John on a lot of this stuff. And you notice how he said the yellow-haired evil man, you know, orange man bad, that guy. You're seeing a lot of this. You're seeing a lot of folks who may not like Trump's personality. They don't think he's the ideal candidate, but they are just so sick and tired of this inconsistency, this getting run over by our bureaucracy. The idea should be, hey, I don't mind paying what I owe, but you guys make this so complicated that I have to pay other people to help me figure out what I owe you. And when I mess up or they mess up, you come after me hammer and tong. And oh, by the way, if I'm rich, connected, and can make a couple phone calls, it's a little easier for them than it is for me who owes $300 and something. People are fed up with that. They're tired of that. And when taxes are due and they're coming, a lot of us it's anxiety. And it may not even be because we think we owe or we're getting a refund or whatever. It's because we have to go through the paperwork. I still have to finish mine. I'll be the first to say that because it is one form, one schedule, one after another. And in all fairness, I do a lot of different professional things, so my tax return's a little more complicated. But it's just not easy. It's not easy, and that's on our political class. It's not just Democrats that do this. It's Republicans too. They're like, well, I've got a new carve out or a new thing or a new tax or a new that. No, just make it simple. We shouldn't do social engineering through the federal tax code. That's a huge, huge, huge problem. So I hear where you guys come from on this. Every time we talk about taxes, it's the same thing, that you're trying to run a business, you're trying to do what you need to do, and the government makes it harder. And every politician out there should listen up and say, how can I make it easier? How can I make it easier for you to do what you do? And stop doing silly, stupid things. Because that big thing that I said, public safety or general welfare or whatever, is exactly what the government uses to say, I can do what I want. And instead, we need to say, no, you can't. Let's stop this. And this is hard on a number of fronts. And I want to take the issue of abortion up real quick, because this is one that's been out there because Trump came out. He said, and I'll just give you the quote, the states will determine by voter legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land. Many states will be different. Many will have a different number of weeks, or some will be more conservative than others. And that's what they will be. At the end of the day, this is all about the will of the people. This is a hard pill to swallow for some pro-life folks, because they think that because Trump doesn't want a federal solution, that he's somehow abandoning. Mike Pence said, well, this is a slap in the face. We've got some pro-life organizations saying Trump has abandoned us. Not everything needs to be decided at the federal level. That's what Democrats think. A lot of Democrats are like, let's have a one-size federal solution, and that way everyone will comply. Well, what that does, and I know this is going to sound wild because it's the language of Democrats, that disenfranchises voters in the states. It says, even though you form a majority in the state where you live, we're going to just roll you because we think the legislators nationally have the votes. Now, on the issue of abortion, Republicans don't have the votes. They don't have consensus or the votes. That's just a fact. Gallup's been doing polling since the 1970s, and basically, call it 50 to 60% of America believes that abortion should be legal under some limited circumstances. There's about, I don't know, a third or a little bit less that says abortion should be allowable on demand, that whenever you want it, you can have it, period. And then about 10, 15% says abortion should be illegal under all circumstances. And that's just where the issue is. That's what Democrats are looking at on abortion. And they say, well, this is where this has been. We see positive movement because of red states essentially banning abortion outright, which is a very nationwide, a relatively minor position. And so we're going to capitalize on that. Trump's coming in and saying, you know what? I want to leave it up to the states. States should decide. Now, that doesn't mean I am ardently pro-life. And as somebody who's ardently pro-life, if I want to go to California and convince folks that you're wrong on this, we need to protect life in California, we need to do this. If I want to go to New York and do the same, or pick your state that's more pro-abortion, I have every right to do that. In fact, we should, and we should support groups in those states that are getting the word out, who are creating options for moms who are pregnant under less than ideal circumstances. Like, that's absolutely what we should do. But it is just wrong to believe that every issue should be decided at the federal level. It just is. The same way I feel about drug policy. I would not support legalizing recreational marijuana right now. It's not a huge deal for me, but I just see what's happening in Denver and other places. The city stinks. You can go to downtown Nashville right now, and in the evenings on the weekends, it reeks of weed. I don't love that, right? So I might say on the state level that I would vote to oppose, legalizing that. Fine. California, they've said, no, go for it. Do whatever. Those are reasonable differences of opinion. I don't need the federal government then coming in and saying, no, here's the law, because that law is not being followed, right? So it's ineffective. It's dead letter. And as a federalist, as somebody who believes that the states should be making most of these calls, I think we need to be consistent, because what happens for a lot of Republicans is they say, Well, we're making progress. We're winning on life. Man, the Dobbs decision means that for the first time in my life, Tennessee is able to restrict abortions prior to the point of fetal viability. That is big, huge. And so we are making progress positively, but then to say, nope, we must have this thing at the federal level, we give the issue to Democrats and say, well, let's fight about it up here and have a one-size-fits-all federal solution. And some of you guys are Republicans, and you like that. You like big government coming from D.C., and you want what you want. I want to neuter the federal government because I believe in the Constitution. I believe it's critical that those enumerated powers are respected and that the other issues are left to the states. And that way, those of us here in Tennessee, our elected officials, they have the capacity to do a lot of things. I'm actually with the public officials in Tennessee that say, I'm kind of not sure about this federal education money because it's, roughly 10% of the education budget. And it comes with a lot of strings. I don't want to play that game. I don't want somebody in California or Vermont or wherever having a voice in how kids are educated in the state of Tennessee. No offense. They can educate how they want in those other places, but we have really messed up because we have nationalized every single issue because that's what happens on cable news. They don't bother to say, well, this is a state issue or this is a federal. They just say everything's national and treat it that way. So do we. And I just don't think that we can do that. I think we need to say some issues need to be decided by the states. Most issues need to be decided by the states. Washington needs to handle immigration. It needs to handle national defense. We know the things that the Constitution says, hey, you know what? This is your job. But the idea that everything is everybody's business, no, it's not. And that's a beautiful structure in the way that our governments work. And we need to respect it, even when there's something that we really want and like. I don't want to jam it down a liberal Democrat's throat. And I hear you. I know the first response is, well, they do it to us. We should stop them. And we shouldn't do it because we need to be consistent, because I understand hypocrisy is all over politics, but we need to be what we actually want to see. And in this instance, with abortion, Trump's right on. And you guys know me. I've always called balls and strikes with Trump. When he's wrong, he's wrong. When he's right, he's right. And on this one, he's right. It doesn't mean it's not a pro-life position. It's just, where should this decision be made? And I think it's smart politically. I think it's right policy. And I'm willing to have that debate all day long. And it seems like our phones went down for a second. They're back up. And it seems like some of y'all might want to have that debate. We got to take a break first. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Oh, man, Belle, that's pretty intense for a Friday. I mean, okay.
You can handle it. I have faith in you.
I can. I can. I'm the father of 4 boys. I can handle anything.
You've heard worse in your own home.
I have. We had to have. We're eating dinner, and Justine, my wife, she makes public service announcements at the dinner table, which are always my favorite. It's like, okay, before we leave the table, I just have to say, we need all of you to stop with the profanity outdoors in the neighborhood. And I inquired further. I said,
what the hell are you talking about?
and they're boys, so they think it's like super cool. Like, yeah, we can use words and stuff.
And Mom doesn't like it, so that makes it cooler.
So they get after it out in the yard. And, they're boys. They're messing around with each other, tackling each other. And then it's like, what the F? Blah, blah, blah. And they do it really loudly. And so Justine was like, there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood, and you need to just tone it down and not use the words you're not supposed to use, because, the moms in the strollers act like, y'all are terrorists. So, and I get the impression.
How old's the oldest?
15.
They're terrorists.
Right. And I'm sitting there kind of like, okay. And I know exactly what she's talking about. These like shirtless heathens like tackling each other and rolling around in the yard while a mom is like rolling her kid on a stroller on the sidewalk. And she's silently thinking, I hope that mine don't turn out like that. And I'm like, they just are, because we're all crazy people at one point or another. We just learn to hide it better. I've done that, after several decades of life, 4 to be exact. I've learned how to hide my crazy better. So I just get on the radio and talk about it. So we have some more stories like that. We've got abortion, all kinds of things to talk about. You all need to come back because it's going to be fun. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back, y'all. This is the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. I've tweeted out, or not tweeted. I can't say I've X'd out. I don't know what it's called. I have posted on X a couple of the columns. We were talking about abortion. I posted that one. I think I've got the one up about the juvenile justice stuff. It's at D Cameron Smith, at D as in David, Cameron Smith on Twitter. Go follow me over there, and I'll communicate with you guys. The other thing to make it easy to find stuff related to our conversations here, the stuff I write with the Tennessean, is hashtag TNPolitics. Hashtag TNPolitics. Search for that hashtag whenever you guys post stuff. That way, if you're having part of the conversation, people can go search for that hashtag, and they will be absolutely fine in finding your stuff without necessarily having to follow everybody in the conversation. So give it a shot. A couple things from the Members Nutrition Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. Question: what were the ages for youth football? 6U through 12U over in Nolensville for the Stars program, and a lot of the TISA programs have similar age groups. Depending on the community where you are, you're going to have multiple teams in different age groups. A lot of times the younger ones, like the 6U, there may be one team, but it really depends on how big your community is and that sort of things. But get your kids out of the house. My mama just locked the door. She'd be like, go, out, door locked. And at night, she would hose us off. So we would line up by the back door where the hose was, and we would start coming up the concrete steps. She would unlock the door and just blast the dirt and sand and mud and everything off of us. We would throw our clothes, it literally come in the laundry room door, strip down, throw our clothes in the washer, and then go up and take a shower.
A friend of mine, his daughter, I think she was 12 at the time, had gone off playing with some of her friends who were boys, and they did what boys do, and she got absolutely filthy.
Yeah.
She was literally, he showed me a picture of her covered in mud from head to toe, just caked in it. And when she got home, she was like, are you mad at me, Daddy? He's like, did you have fun? Yeah. I'm not mad then.
Yeah. I mean, I'll find my boys, and they will literally be painted with mud, like their whole faces and everything. And I'm like, what are you doing? War paint. Well, okay. But that's mud, right? Yeah. What? I mean, we could use.
No, it's not. It's war paint, dude. Get with the program.
My 12-year-old has at various times pointed out we could just use real paint if you want. And
good point.
Do not. Nope.
The mud washes off much easier.
On the Super Talk text line, I got to go Franklin Cowboys. I believe that's TNYFL. We have played the Cowboys for years, just switched leagues, but love some Franklin Cowboys. Great program over there. Again, I'm a homer for the Nolensville Stars, we're formerly the Nolensville Panthers. We've got some Tennessee Stars now. It's pretty cool. My 10-year-old, who is a Giant, was like, Dad, what if we just called ourselves the Unicorns? I mean, that's real intimidating. When you come out there and you're the Unicorns, if you're not tough as a rusty nail, then you're going to get murdered. So, yeah, we're not the Unicorns. We're the Stars. But all these programs are out there. Y'all should go check them out. Give them a shot, because that makes all the difference in the world. If you get those kids outside, I've had a couple mamas tell me, well, we're concerned about, traumatic brain injury, stuff like that. Are you concerned that your kid's becoming a waste of flesh inside by staring at a screen? Are you concerned that they're not learning any life lessons, or are physically incapacitated and breathe heavy when they walk to the refrigerator? Well, I think that we should be concerned about a lot of things, because that's what good parents do. But the other thing, all joking aside, we have to do a lot of training now to keep the head out of the game, to help folks with form. The stuff that I learned, which is like put your face in front of the runner on the football. We don't do that anymore. And we're a lot more thoughtful about this stuff. So we do training. We do all that stuff. Coaches around Middle Tennessee have to do it. No matter what league you're in, coaches, the dads that come out and participate, you're doing background checks, you're doing training, you're doing all the stuff. So we've got a lot of really responsible leagues around here. And it's really good for your kids to just get out of the house. The Xbox in my house right now is a piece of furniture in my bedroom because it is pretty outside. Oh, here we go on the Super Talk text line. I got to go Donaldson Warriors. If you guys are sleeping on youth football, you're just missing out. I get college football, love college football. I love the Titans, I just love football. But youth football is so much fun. I mean, everybody gets out. It gets wild. And it is absolutely great. I've got an article out right now that you need to check out. It just dropped this morning, actually, over on AL.com. Bipartisan fears of civil war stoked in human soup. It's very exciting. I've tweeted it. It's about a conversation I had at the Lifetime Gym.
Is that a chicken or beef base?
No, it's human soup. I had that moment, you do your workout and you're like, hey, I'm going to go sit in the hot tub. And that's where, people come and hang out and talk. And then I'm like, wait a minute. We're just making human soup. That's literally what we're doing. If we just turn up the temperature just enough, then we're making a human soup base. And that was kind of gross. But the point is, we're having talks about the emerging civil war. And I want you guys to think about it because we hear this stuff all the time. If we don't win the election, America as we know it is over. We're in an election for the heart and soul of our nation. I'm not sure America can recover if insert candidate name here isn't elected. Look, I want you guys to know I am the scarred survivor of many historic American elections. And our national demise has not happened yet. I cannot tell you. This goes back to early in my career when I worked on the Hill, and I had members of Congress, senators saying, well, if Barack Obama gets elected again, we're all going to die. I mean, various permutations on the theme. And we didn't, right? It wasn't great. We got the Affordable Care Act. We got a lot of stuff. Unaffordable Care Act. We got a lot of policies that we didn't like. But we did not die. And so I was talking to folks about this, and they asked me this question. Do you think we're closer to a civil war than we've been in generations? And I just said no. I said no. And they looked at me like I was a crazy person. So how can you say that? Like, you're somebody who's telling us, like, you write about politics, you do talk radio, you do this. How do you not know that the Civil War is just, it's about upon us? And then I asked them, who would you shoot first? That was my question. Civil War is imminent, who would you shoot first? Silence. And they were like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if we're going to have a war, wars are where people kill people over a disagreement, and you got to know who you're going to shoot and why you're going to shoot them, because that's what a war is. And, they told me, well, I'm not going to shoot anybody. They had no intention of shooting anyone. And they said that other people would, right? That they weren't there in the hot tub, but the other people would shoot people. And I just kept asking, like, well, why? And they said the usual stuff, and you guys have heard it, and you guys know it. America's gone woke. We're taxing and spending like we're drunk. I say that. It's true. Washington doesn't care about us. Also true. I hate that. I conceded those points and just said, okay, but who should we shoot then? And basically they said, well, we just got to win this election, which I agreed. But, and then there's a liberal in every hot tub, just so you know. And this gentleman wanted to explain to me that President Donald Trump is basically a dog whistling threat to democracy. I said, okay. Great. And they said, well, how could you ignore the January 6th attack on the Capitol? I said, I don't. That was awful. It was terrible, and those who committed crimes should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And I said, I've answered your question. Will you answer mine? And he said, well, he wasn't going to shoot anybody. He was mad and thought we needed more gun regulation, and we need to keep the guns out of the hands of the crazy people. He's not going to last very long in a civil war without a gun. But again, I'm sitting there, and it's Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, and nobody wants to shoot anybody. They didn't even want to wing someone. Like, just a little, shoot them in the foot. And yet everybody in that hot tub said war is imminent. And I just think we need to be real careful about saying this type of stuff, because I'd much rather go to the polls and cast a vote than shoot somebody. And I think most of y'all feel the same way. I mean, it's all right to be angry about politics and say this is nuts and this isn't great and we need to change it. But we're allowing social media, cable news, opportunistic politicians to basically scare us to death. And when we're afraid, this is actually science. I, as a foster parent, I'm trained on this about what happens when you're afraid or scared. Well, it's fight, flight, freeze. Your prefrontal cortex is disengaged. You're not thinking clearly. Politicians love that. When we're afraid, we surrender our reason. That's what we do. And this politician's saying, well, I'll protect you from all the bad things. I don't need a politician hero. I don't need somebody to save me. I got Jesus. The idea that we're just concerned that our neighbors are going to open fire and we're going to start shooting. I'm not talking about the crazy people that shoot up a school. I'm not talking about the deranged individuals that watch this and go do stupid, awful, atrocious things. We need to cool the temperature so that we have fewer of those people. But that's way different than a war. A war is my side versus your side. A civil war is a nation that's fighting each other with guns. My contention in all of this is that, look, folks, fear is the enemy, and you can't shoot it. You got to look at what's making you angry. And if you've got a grievance, like that caller who called in and said the IRS, after I tried to get my withholding right, I got it wrong, and they said I owed them this, and that just drives me insane. That's fine. That's a specific thing that happened to you that you want to correct. That the stuff that we worked on with the juvenile justice, parental access, that happened to me. That's a real thing that's happened to other people, and so I'm upset about that, and we go work to fix it. But think about that. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from things that are in your life that have actually happened to you? Things that are driving you nuts about the way government works? Trust me, come Monday, a lot of y'all are going to be really mad about the way government works because you're going to write a check to the government. You're going to say, how are you wasting all this money? But I would ask you, is it a politician? Is it cable news? Is it social media that's got you bent? Because if it's not something in your day-to-day life, you might want to think, maybe they're doing it for a reason. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I can tell you that I know countless politicians that would prefer you to be afraid because it's just easier. It's easier than explaining. Like this FISA stuff is a perfect example. They say that the government's spying on us. Kinda. Let's be specific about what the actual problem is. The government is surveilling people abroad, let's say people in Iran, that are terrorist threats, and we know it. Then those folks call somebody in the United States. That person may be a United States citizen. Now you got them on the phone having a conversation. What is the process by which you incidentally collect the part of that would require a Article 3 judge to make a determination whether you get a warrant to hear that American person? What's the process by which you say, you know what, we have to stop recording here because there's a citizen on the phone and we don't have a warrant to pick up this information? What's the process for using that information? Like these are complicated, annoying things that require reason, implicate the Constitution, matter deeply. I think the abuses of the FISA program by the FBI are documented. They're clear. Where people in the FBI pulled up this incidentally collected data because it was easy for them. And those abuses can't continue. So I'm with every one of y'all that's like, no. But this is like boring, wonky policy stuff that's not easily explained in a soundbite. It matters. FISA is an important program. It gives us the ability to protect ourselves. It can also be abused and violate our constitutional rights. We got to figure that out. And so I get it that folks may be annoyed about a vote today or say this is right or wrong. we got to look at the specifics, and a lot of this stuff, that's how it goes. So, I mean, we need to take a chill pill. Look at the issues that we care about. Immigration is wildly complicated. We have a huge problem, and it's not a on or off. It's a, okay, how does this work? Okay, we build the wall. Okay, we hire enforcement agents. Well, talk to me about the amnesty process and how we want to handle that. What are your time bounds? Like, this gets boring pretty fast, but it's really important. And so that's just the thing that I'd say. Like, if you're not willing to shoot somebody, we're not on the verge of a civil war. And I've told folks, my sort of final party mark, and then we got to take a break, was that think about what happened with the Capitol attacks. That's what Democrats love going to and saying, well, see, this is evidence that democracy is about to fail. To which I said, actually, I don't think so. I think it's quite the opposite. That was awful and terrible, and it was driven by a president who lost the election and then convinced people that he didn't. But think about it this way. A lot of you who are listening to me right now are like, well, clearly he won the election. It was rigged. He told me it was. So that's the thing. And yet, we didn't go to war. Think about that. 2/3 of the Republican Party is convinced that Trump is the rightful winner of the last election cycle. And they didn't go to war. That either means they don't really believe Trump, or they're actually really dedicated to the civil resolution of political conflict. You get two choices there. Because if I actually believed that election was stolen, that's probably worth fighting for. But I don't. And I think the issue here where Democrats are like, well, this is just, we're about to have a civil war and they're going to seize power and Trump's going to declare himself king. No, he's not. He's not. He left office. Now he's grousing about it and he's saying stuff. But at the end of the day, we did not go to war. When you had the sitting president of the United States at the time saying this election was rigged and stolen, there's only two options. It means either you didn't believe him or he said it's more important that we don't shoot each other. And I think that's really important. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. Appreciate you guys. Good conversation. And I'm not arguing that COVID didn't make the election. Several of y'all pointed out there were irregularities and there were lots of things that didn't set well with me. I agree. I'm looking for evidence that would have overturned the results of the Electoral College. I'm looking for but what I believe is irrelevant right here, right? I don't believe it was stolen in the sense of I think Joe Biden is the president. I think Joe Biden's about to lose an election. But I don't think that it was quote unquote stolen. Like we can disagree over that. That's fine. But my question to those of you who believe it's stolen is you're clearly waiting to vote in the next election. And if I thought my government was stolen, that people had just taken away my vote and I no longer counted, I'd do a lot more than complain about it. You know, I would organize. I would do lots of things because if I really believed that I could not count on the vote, I'd be really upset, angry, outraged, and I would do something about it. I don't, and I don't think we should. And I think a lot of Republicans are saying it was irregular. It's not something that I liked. But, man, I'm not confident enough that I'm willing to go to war. And that's my point. If you were confident enough that this is the way it was, that you're willing to go to war, then I think that's pretty consistent. But it at least shows a lack of confidence that you're not willing to kill somebody over it. Or it just means that hey, you did this, and I really respect the electoral process because I think it's better to sort these things out by voting than it is trying to pick up a gun and start shooting. I think that's really important. I've got Stephen in Paris, Tennessee on the election. Stephen, what you got?
Hey, man. Yeah, I got to figure out why you feel like the election wasn't stolen because there's clearly the majority of us in this nation clearly know that it was stolen and that there wasn't a recount. That was up to the vice president. That was his position. That's what the whole outrage was all about, and all he had to do was support his president who nominated him as a vice president and to call a recount of all those votes. But you didn't see what was going on during COVID at the election ballot, at the ballot boxes. You didn't hear about all of the things that were coming in, the mail-in votings, all of the fake votes, all of the made-up
Hang
votes.
on. I hear you, and I've heard those arguments, and I'm not arguing that with you. What I'm asking you get two options. Either so I'm assuming, Stephen, that you believe that with high confidence that Joe Biden is not the duly elected president of the United States. Is that fair?
100%.
Okay.
Along with a whole bunch of other Democrats that are in power that shouldn't be in power. They were all manufactured. It was all set up, and it was all stolen from we the people.
Sure. Okay. I believe that you believe that, and that's fine. I'm not arguing with you. Are you willing to go to war, to shoot someone over this, and who would it be?
See, that's the difference in it. It's not really, a civil war like people are thinking back in the day. This is a politically driven civil war. I'm not willing to shoot a fellow countryman over a difference in beliefs, but I'm ready to defend the innocent people of this nation, the Christian body, the people that are vulnerable to attack from what we're seeing from the terrorists that are pouring into our country, from the
but you're going to do that with respect to the election. That's what we're talking about. You're going to do that by voting for Trump in the next election, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So but we're not having a civil war is a specific thing. You remember the Civil War. A lot of Americans died. We shot each other. What I'm hearing you say is, I truly believe this election was stolen, but I'm not willing to shoot anybody over it.
I can see states turning against each other, depending on how this election's going to go either way, really. I could see states trying to secede from the nation, I don't know permanently how that will look, but what I want to happen is the right people to be in the right places instead of the wrong people to be in the the right places.
Yeah, I agree.
So it can all change peacefully, as peacefully as possible, and we can get our law enforcement and our military out here to hold down the chaos that's going to ensue, no matter which way it goes. But
sure, I appreciate that, Stephen.
As far as the Civil War, like if you're thinking like blacks against whites or Democrats against Republicans, no, I don't think that's possible. But I think there will be a separation of states and powers. It could come to pass, but I don't see neighbor versus neighbor, brother versus brother shooting and killing each other over what they believe in. Not in this day and time.
And that's because you're a great American, Stephen. I appreciate it. Thanks for the call. I think that's consistent, right? To say my recourse here for us going the wrong way and things I feel like are really wrong is I'm going to vote. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to say, this is my guy, and we're going to move in that direction. That's it, right? Because I think that actually shows that Republicans actually have a real dedication to democracy. Stephen was passionate. He's not going to shoot anybody. It's saying that the American government, the Constitution, the way that we do this, the peaceful transfer of power is more important than my disagreement. Because I think a lot of folks say, I feel really strongly about this. You should. That's okay. At the same time, I don't think any of y'all are willing to shoot anybody over it. I've got Bowd in Lebanon on the election. What you got?
Hey, Cam. First of all, if you please remind Matt that the correct pronunciation is Nevada.
Okay.
I agree that the election was not stolen, per se stolen, but I do believe that it was obtained through nefarious means in the sense of ballot harvesting,
Okay.
changing some laws for voting, irregularities without due process of it going through the state's normal means of how they change election procedures.
That's fair.
I don't doubt that Biden. It's hard for me to believe that 81 million Americans would have voted for him, but if dead people can vote and you can drop in mail-in ballots at every box in town, sure, it could happen. But so I wouldn't say, like you said, I wouldn't say it was stolen, but I don't think it was obtained through the normal means of a regular election.
Sure. And it wasn't. And thanks for the call. I think that's a very fair point to make of saying, we had COVID. This was not by any means a normal election cycle. And anybody who says that, I'll back them 100%. This was not normal. This was not the way it was done conventionally. And we had a lot of states, particularly Republican states, after that, pass a bunch of laws about election integrity and say, no, we saw this. We didn't like this. We didn't like the ability for that to happen. Again, my point isn't arguing with anybody about how you feel about the election, or are you willing to shoot somebody? Are you so confident that somebody is taking your government away from you that the democratic process, the Constitution, can no longer hold, and we've got to go to war, and an actual war? And I think the answer, and I don't think the answer, I know the answer is no for the vast majority of Americans and Republicans. And that's perfectly, that's great. We should applaud that. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. We're having a good discussion. You guys have been great. SuperTalk text line 615-737-9986. You can call in too. A couple things I wanted to address. A lot of y'all have called for voter ID, voter photo ID. Yep. When I go to vote, got to have it. And I think the robust requirements that you prove that you're a citizen and that you're entitled to vote are mission critical. We should absolutely do that. And I'm all for that. I'll take exception with some of the folks that are saying, and I get it, calling me an idiot and saying, what you're thinking. It's just, we can believe that the election is stolen and not want to shoot anybody. You can. I'm not telling you what you can believe. You can believe whatever you want. What I'm saying is that let's go back to America's founding. We had a revolution. The British government was in charge. It truncated the rights of the people. It oppressed them. It basically said, we're going to tax and exploit you in ways that are unfair and not give you any real say in your own self-governance. So we picked up guns and we shot the British. Let's not mince words. That's exactly what we did. It was a revolution. And a couple of you on the SuperTalk text lines have said that it's not really a civil war. It's a revolution. We need to fight for our freedom. That is what, if you believe that your representation is no longer there, that your votes do not count, that someone has taken away your right to self-governance, you have the same grievance as America's founding. And they picked up guns and they shot people. I'm not suggesting that we do that. I think that's an awful idea because I think our recourse is to be better at politics, to be more strategic, to vote, to get out there and do what we do using the Constitution. The Constitution is not broken. We can vote. I have every confidence in our votes here in Tennessee. I have every confidence that those votes are cast correctly. When I go in and cast my vote, I think that the totals are accurate because there are poll watchers there, the process I trust. And I trust that other Americans in other states probably feel the same way. I don't think anybody's saying, I really don't want to know that my vote counts. But if you're telling me that you genuinely believe that, and you under no circumstance would be willing to pick up a gun and start a revolution, then you might be a coward. That's thing one. You might be very dedicated to the civil resolution of conflict and say, even though I believe this and I know this, I still think this is the best way to do it. We need to get out there and vote. That's the other possibility. Or you're just a liar. You don't actually believe the election is stolen, and you just say, well, I didn't like it. And that's fine, but say what you mean. And so that's what I'm asking people to be specific about. I mean, that's what our founding fathers did. They listed the grievances they had. What do you think the Declaration of Independence is? It is folks setting out the reasons for their separation from the government and saying, we will not be under your authority anymore. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we've reached that point. But if that's what you believe, and I'm telling you, if I believe that, not that there were irregularities, not that it was an abnormal election cycle, not that there were things that I didn't like, but if I actually believe that Joe Biden was not the rightfully elected president of the United States, I'd be the first one in line to start a revolution. Because that would mean I no longer had self-governance. There's only a couple of options here. And I think it's really important that we say what we mean and that we're consistent. And I think most Republicans are actually pretty dedicated to this process. They're unhappy right now because Joe Biden's a terrible president. But I think they're very dedicated to not taking up arms and starting a civil war or even a revolution because they but they love the Constitution. I believe a lot of you folks that are listening to the sound of my voice love the Constitution, love our not our government in terms of the personnel, but the setup. And I think you're right. And that's okay. But the mechanism is use that process to change the direction of the country. And I think we need to be better at that. Some of you have been very patient on the call. I've got Gary and Smyrna. Gary, what do you want to talk about?
Well, two things. the election, number one, I just feel that the absentee ballots has been way overdone. If you can't get up off of the couch and go vote, then don't vote. That's the way I look at it. There's been a lot of people gave up their lives, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Operation Desert Storm, and so on, that fought for our right to do that. If you can't get up and go down there and vote, then don't bother.
Well, what about the military members who use absentee voting?
I didn't say everybody.
That's a lot of absentee voters are members of the military who can't be in state to vote.
Yes, it is, and there's a lot of people that are crippled and can't. But this flooding of the absentee ballots is too much, where the states just mail them out. They shouldn't be mailed out. I mean, the military gets theirs. You know, they're provided with the ballots in the military. They're not mailed out to them. That you can check.
What about the state of Colorado, where almost all of its voting is mail voting?
That's what I'm telling you. I don't agree with it. I think that's totally wrong.
So
you can't take a couple hours out of your day to go vote for something that is that important, which you're alluding to is a very important thing.
So the people in Colorado can't decide that it is safe and secure and something that they want to use?
I don't know that the people did decide that.
They did.
You?
They absolutely did. Like, that's law in Colorado.
Then that's
it's been law in Colorado. Yeah,
and that's the law in Colorado.
And that's what I'm saying is that if we say we don't like it and we want to restrict things in Tennessee, then let's do it. But
I agree.
But for example, there's folks that say let's do it early voting. Like, we don't like early voting. I love early voting. I will fight you all day long on it. And so, but folks saying, well, that's not day of and paper ballots. No, we can't have it. Okay, but let the states decide how they want to do it, and let's run those elections. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree to a point. I think we could do it nationally.
No.
Just make it a national
The states, the Democrats want to federalize elections and tell you how you must run it in every state. Why on earth would we say, yeah, let's do that, so that then we hand Democrats the capacity, if they have the majority, to jam it down our throats?
Well, on that point, I would agree with you, yes. The other question is the FISA court thing that's been going on.
Sure.
I don't get why our legislative branch has to scrap things, has to go to these great extremes. The FISA rules are fine until you get to the part of what is being presented to the FISA court. And the FBI's attorneys, 2 of them lied, and I don't know, at least 3 agents gave unfactual information.
Sure.
So why don't we just put teeth into the law that says, if you're convicted of lying to the court, you're going to go to jail for 25 years.
Well, lying to the court's already a crime. I mean, and you can be prosecuted for that, and the DOJ can prosecute people for doing that, and they have done that. The problem with the FISA court is it's what's called an ex parte court, meaning if I'm saying, well, somebody's contacted Gary, and I want to be able to surveil Gary, I'm just going before the government goes before a FISA judge and makes their case, but you, Gary, never get to go make your case as to why they shouldn't be able to do it, obviously, because then you would know. And so that's the problem, is that it's one party, and that party is the government, and the government basically holds all the cards. Does that make sense?
Only to a certain point, because you're saying if the government holds all the cards, then we're no longer self-governed.
No, I'm saying with the government having the ability to just make their case and not allow anybody else to contradict them and say, actually, y'all aren't telling the truth. The judge is sitting there. He's hearing what the court's saying, or hearing what the government's saying. Well, we're about to have a terrorist attack. You got to let us observe this individual. There's no contradiction of the government's story, and that gives the government a lot of power. And that's why a lot of conservatives are saying, maybe we need better restrictions here. And they've made a lot of reforms to the program because there were a lot of abuses.
Very true. You've got to have it. I don't think you can do away with it, is my point. Not in today's times with countries like Iran and Russia and China. You just have to know what they're up to.
Yeah.
You absolutely do. And that's the only way to find out, unfortunately, is to spy. To surveil those people that they feel are spies. You know, the thing that was disconcerting was what happened with the stuff with President Trump.
Sure, absolutely.
That was told.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you got a slap on the wrist. I've been in traffic court, and they said, well, the court has to accept the word of the officer because he's an officer of the court. Well, right there, you just put the government 1 foot in front of you.
No, I mean, you don't. You're right.
It's the same type of deal.
You don't have to just take their word for it. And in these observational situations, that's why it's a big problem. Gary, I appreciate the call. I think it's right to be skeptical here. I love the idea of reauthorizing FISA every 2 years instead of every 5. I love the idea of figuring out, okay, when do we need to involve an Article 3 judge? When do we need to have a judge that is going to do this, that isn't an ex parte? It's not a hearing. You got to go get a warrant like you would in a normal criminal proceeding. Those are questions we should ask. That's what we should absolutely do. And I love that. We've got to take a break. Man, we are going hot and heavy today. The time has flown. We're about to wind up our second hour of the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Well, you guys are awesome. Time has flown by. We're just talking about Civil War. And what do we mean by that? Because of a conversation I had at the gym with folks who were just saying we're on the verge. And I disagree. I don't think we are. I think most Americans, and by that Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, most of y'all actually agree that upholding our Constitution, protecting our election integrity, and making sure that our voices are heard in elections is the way to go. Your solution here to what's happening now, what you've observed over the last several years, is to go to the polls. I mean, I've literally only seen one person that basically said, you know what? I'd be okay shooting Democrats. The rest of y'all are like, no. And that's normal, and that's good, and that's healthy. And that person who said that, I think that's nuts, and you should really rethink that. That, to me, is the critical question. So you're going to shoot. Why are you going to shoot them? And if you're not, then let's uphold the process. Let's uphold election integrity. And every last one of you who said, well, if somebody shoots at me first, I will. Well, that's self-defense, and I'll support you all day long on that. Because that's why we have the Second Amendment. That we have the ability to protect ourselves. That's something I absolutely support and will continue to support. But I'm talking about, do you believe that your country was stolen from you? I think we've got great opportunity. We got a lot to talk about when we come back. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Let's finish this show strong. Welcome back. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the Matt Murphy Show, and we have had a serious conversation today, and it's been fun. I love the back and forth. I'm pointing out to my liberal friends that Republicans don't want to shoot them. They just don't. And you guys generally are agreeing with me and saying, no, we don't. We vehemently disagree with them on policy. We disagree with them on the direction of the country. But, and many say, I disagree that Joe Biden was rightfully elected. But nevertheless, they're not willing to pick up a gun and go start shooting whomever. And I think that's great. That's what we should want. And instead, we're just in this breathless democracy is about to die. We're on the verge of a civil war. I'm telling you we're not. Mike has been extremely patient, and he wants to talk about the FBI. Mike, what you got?
Hey, well, we wouldn't have any problems in this country if we had a good FBI and Department of Justice. They work for the Democratic Party, and so maybe in the future we should think about somehow incorporating some kind of control on these guys, such as having a bipartisan involvement with the FBI, working in the FBI and in the Department of Justice, because right now they just do whatever they want for the DNC. They committed treason. They tried to overthrow our government in early 2016, saying Trump worked for the Russians. They committed treason. So nothing has changed. And you think that we can vote our way out of that? There's no way.
Yeah.
All the voting machines are connected to the internet.
Okay, so what are we going to do
about it?
about
So we have no more elections. There is no election.
So what are we going to do about it?
We need to start another Department of Justice and another FBI that is consisted of Democrats and Republicans and independents to go in there and oversee these people because they're basically criminal psychopaths.
But Mike, you told me elections don't matter anymore. I mean, do we need to overthrow the government, or what are we going to do?
We need, like I just said, we need to control the FBI because this is how we got into this situation, because of the FBI. We need to regain control somehow.
Are you suggesting that we win elections and then clean house over there? Is that what I hear?
Well, no, I think we just somehow need to get our government, all the Senate and the Congress, somehow to think about this. I mean, we cannot go forward as a country anymore.
But if you have the Senate and the House, don't you have to win the elections to get them to do the thing you want them to do?
Oh, yeah, but you get my point.
Well, what I'm asking is,
this FBI straight. I don't know. I can't answer you. But the point is, the FBI has destroyed our country. They committed treason. And got away with it.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm simply trying to understand. You're telling me I can't trust an election, but then it kind of seems like we need our elected officials to hold those guys accountable. I mean, then what?
They had the hearings in all 4 states that, they had all the stolen election from 2020 with Giuliani and all these people. And they had all these witnesses, and they had affidavits, they sworn testimony of how the election was stolen. And did the FBI investigate any of it?
Well,
no.
Do you trust elections in Tennessee?
I don't know. No, the machines are connected to the internet. So no. How the hell could they work?
Okay.
They're connected.
So
the internet.
You don't trust any election.
The internet is connected to the voting machines. So what do you think is going to happen?
I don't think they're connected to the voting machines. Like, I've seen my voting machines, and I don't see them. Like, I see the boxes, and they're not connected to anything.
I've seen otherwise. I guess they're all different in different states.
Yeah, maybe. Are you in Tennessee?
Yeah, I'm right over here in Donaldson.
Okay. Well, I mean, I just want to understand what we should do if we can't trust anything.
We need to get involved in the FBI and Department of Justice because those people are completely corrupt and they have to be reined in. And it sucks that they have whoever wins power as the presidency gets to control them, and it shouldn't be that way.
So you want an independent, unelected, not bureaucracy?
We need people. We need bipartisan people involved in the FBI and Department of Justice.
Okay.
Everybody's committing crimes and getting away with it. We need also a new division, something like the Department of Justice that says everybody's going to be prosecuted from now on. The Department of Justice and FBI, they just come and prosecute whoever. Oh, you broke a crime. Well, we're not going to investigate your.
But prosecuting everybody, I can tell you as a lawyer, That's just not that's not feasible because not only we don't catch everybody, and when we do catch everybody, we've got a finite amount of resources to put to this. We'd have billion-dollar legal budgets everywhere.
Well, at least our country would still be alive. If we start prosecuting people, it might make people think, do a second thought about
our country's not alive right now. You don't think our country's alive?
It's completely controlled by the globalists in China. We're about to lose. The media has not mentioned anything about BRICS taking over as a petrodollar. The dollar is about to be dumped because China and Russia, along with all the other countries, are going to bring in BRICS to take over the global sale of oil. So the dollar is about to just be dropped, and nobody's told anybody about it because our government that controls the media, they want the middle class to be caught with their pants down, not prepared for this, so they get hit by inflation, the massive devaluation of the dollar.
If Trump wins, do you think that'll be a sign that we're going in a better direction?
Yeah, but he's not.
I don't know. It looks like he's up. It looks like he's up.
The mail-in ballots aren't. Yeah, the mail-in ballots aren't going to stop. They're going to vote. They're going to bring in the mail-in ballots for 3 weeks after the election.
So if he wins, it's not stolen, and if he loses, it's probably stolen.
He's not going to win. They're going to bring in those mail-in ballots for 3 weeks after the election.
Okay.
They're going to do whatever they want to because, like I said, nobody gets prosecuted. All those hearings that they had in the 4 states back in 2020, all those witnesses, none of those claims were investigated. Nobody's getting prosecuted. So they're going to do whatever they want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mike, I appreciate the call. I think Mike's raising some points that other of y'all that resonate with some of the rest of y'all. I'm not arguing in the least that the country is going in a good direction. No, I don't like it. I'm simply saying that I think most of us think the answer is to win elections, take it in a different direction. Whether that's on the state level or the federal level, if the thesis is we can't trust anything now, then we're doomed. We might as well revolt. I think we can trust things. I do trust elections in Tennessee. I do think that our elected officials run a process that's pretty solid. I know in Nolensville that when I go, I watch it. I make sure everything looks good at everything. When I press the button and the paper ballot comes out, that everything matches. It looks good to me. And I understand that our election integrity and those are concerns, and they should be, and they should always be. But we have to have a mechanism to govern ourselves and to resolve conflict. And that's the reason I'm not a big government Republican. That's the reason I do think most things should be decided at the state level. I'm a federalist. I think the states are the seat of power. No, that doesn't mean that counties and municipalities should control the states. States create those. States created the federal government too. And so I think a lot of those decisions need to be made there. And guess what? I feel a heck of a lot better with my election integrity legislation being based out of Tennessee than I do about Washington, D.C. And I don't know why you guys would suggest we should make Washington in charge. I just disagree with you. I think that's wild. And the idea, well, I can trust the election results in Tennessee, but I got to be a big government Republican and say I can't trust them in places where my preferred candidate lost. I don't know, folks. I don't know if I can get there with you. I really think states should have the ability to do this. I mean, that's what Trump's doing on abortion. Is he's saying we should let states decide. That's the right place to make this decision, full stop. And I know you don't like it. I know you'd like to tell people in California what to do. Guess what? I believe those folks like to tell you and I what to do too. It's just not right. We shouldn't create the weapon that gets used against us. In fact, we should limit the power of the federal government. Yes, I see y'all on Convention of the States. Dean, you have been the most patient. Tell me about Convention of the States. You've been hanging, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's an hour and 28 minutes.
Yeah, long time.
Convention of the States will help solve all of these problems. And I want to just back up a second. I have been an election judge in 3 different states, and the only way to commit fraud in an election is with mail-in ballots. So I've been there. I've been on the front lines. I've worked when people like you come in. I've done it for a number of years here in Tennessee, in Illinois, and in California. So I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly. But a convention of states, Amendment 9 and 10 need to be re-emphasized within our court system. We need to have elections with integrity. And I think 9 and 10 and the convention of states, I think we'll add a couple of more good amendments to the Constitution. And one other thing, please, I cringe. I just can't stand it when you say the word democracy. We are not, have never been a democracy. We are a constitutional federal republic, and please, let's never be a democracy.
I agree with you on pure democracy. I use that as shorthand for governance by the people, and so yes, I understand the technical nomenclature. But
the problem is it's confusing, and people think we are a democracy when we are not, have never been.
Well,
until these guys really take over, and then we will be, and then the shit will hit the fan.
Well, you're talking to a guy that still wants to go back to where states elected senators. Like, I think that would help us out tremendously, because I think this, not having any fidelity to the states is a big deal. What did you say, Bill?
You mean appointed?
Yeah.
You said elected.
Appointed. Yes, I need. Right. Yeah, I need to be clear about that. The state legislators appoint the senators. That's the way it used to be. Now we have direct election, and we need to realize that some of these checks and balances and systems and what are federal and what are state issues, those actually matter. What do you think, Dean?
I agree with you, Dan. Sorry, I got Dan Mandis on the phone. I agree with you, Ken. And by the way, I've written you emails from your op-eds in the Tennessean. 1913 was the worst year this country ever had. We got screwed with the Federal Reserve. We got the income tax, and we got the direct election of senators. If we can go back to 1912 and fix that, I'd get in my Wayback Machine with Sturm the dog.
Well, I appreciate your call, Dean, and thank you for thinking through it. My only issue with the Convention of the States is just it's really hard to amend the Constitution, to get through that ratification process, to get all that done. It's a great process and idea. Oh, man, tough to get through it. And I hear you, and I'm with you that some of this stuff could be better clarified. Man, it's tough. Let's see. We got a little bit of time. We can take one call. I've got CJ and Donaldson talking about can't trust the elections. CJ, what you got?
Well, you were kind of disagreeing with the last caller, I thought. And if you think that we have free elections and we can win elections like the red wave of 2022 that didn't happen, or are we to believe that 24 is going to be any different?
So my question is, if you can't trust the elections, what should we change to help you so that you get to where you trust the elections?
Absolutely no more mail-in ballots.
Okay.
Vote one day. Make it a national holiday. But as it stands right now, to me, you're a fool if you expect any different result than what happened in 2020.
Do you trust the elections in Tennessee?
Tennessee wasn't in question.
Well, right.
Tennessee is not, how do I say this? Tennessee doesn't have areas that is democratically controlled from the local level, county commissioner, mayor, supervisor elections, i.e. Atlanta.
Sure they do. They have that in Nashville. They have that in Memphis. We do have.
But is it enough? Is there enough of those citizens that would to change an election in Tennessee? No, there's not.
Okay, so flip it. Do you trust the elections in California?
Absolutely not.
Okay, but why?
Because you've got one party that's got too much control of the whole state. I mean, you take, for instance, Atlanta. I mean, there's no conservative values, no conservative power at all. And most of these major cities, you've got Democrat, very liberal mayors, and every level of government under them is all democratically controlled and unfortunately corrupt. And
so California we can't trust because Democrats have statewide power. but Tennessee we could trust because Republicans have statewide power.
And now say that again.
So you're saying, you told me, and I want to make sure I get this right, that we can't trust California because Democrats have statewide power, and
Correct.
we can trust Tennessee where Republicans have statewide power.
I guess in an essence, I guess you're right. But when has there been where the Republicans are not against voter ID, are we?
No, I support that. I think it's great.
Are the Republicans against that? If you're against voter ID, it's the only reason would be for corruption.
Yeah,
and which party is for voter is against voter ID? We should have voter ID and thumbprint verification.
So if the Democratic mayor of Nashville is against photo ID requirements, we can't trust elections in Tennessee either.
I think we can trust elections to turn out as we like in Tennessee because they don't have the numbers to manipulate. They have the numbers to manipulate it in Atlanta, Georgia. They have enough registered Democratic voters to take in the mail-in votes and add them up, and they don't have to worry about having 102% of a district voting like they did have in some of the other states. And like the previous caller said, no investigation, no prosecutions. There was no prosecution. We don't even really know who shot Miss Babbitt at the Capitol.
Okay.
When you've got one side, when you've got the media totally on one side of a two-party system, you pretty much got a one-party system. And I don't see how. I mean, do you think Joe Biden got 82 million votes or whatever it was he got?
Do I think Joe Biden won the election? Yeah, I do.
You think he won the election fair and square?
I do. I think it was a COVID election that was super weird, but I hadn't seen anything that suggests that the Electoral College should have shifted the other way based on those states.
So you believe that Joe Biden is more popular among black folks than Barack Obama?
It's not more popular.
Do you really believe that?
It's that.
Do you believe that a man that didn't campaign, got more votes than anybody in the history of the country?
You know what?
And that same state, the same state that elected Joe Biden, Georgia.
Can I answer your question?
One more
I think Joe Biden is going to get more votes this time than he got last time because people are turning out in record numbers because they're paying attention to this stuff. I think right now, if I had to guess, Trump still beats him. But, I mean, we are going to see real high turnout. We're going to see that. And so my point is...
Are we going to see real high turnout in mail-in ballots, or are we going to see it at the polls?
It won't be as high on mail-in ballots as it was last time because of COVID. I can tell you that. But, like, for example, a state like Colorado, they vote by mail-in ballot. That's how Colorado votes. And that was...
And how is Colorado run? Is it not a very liberal state?
Focus on the families there, and it was a Republican state until, like, the last cycle or so. So I think that Colorado and people in Colorado think that system's fine. Thank you for the call, CJ. I think that's awesome. We've got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back, folks. I'm Cameron Smith. Thanks for the conversation. I love this. I appreciate the back and forth and where we are. I want to win. I ultimately want us to move in a better direction. And I'm hearing a lot of, well, we can't trust any elections. We're not going to take up arms and start a revolution. We seem to be dead in the water if that's our take. And so it matters to me kind of what you guys are saying and what you think. And I want to get it. Like, I want to understand. The thing that I don't like, and I'll just put a fine point on it, is I've been clear with my position. I don't think that there were the COVID stuff made the elections in 2020 kind of funky. There were a lot more mail-in. There was a lot more stuff that was weird because of the pandemic. But I do not see evidence that would shift the count of the Electoral College in a way that elects Trump as president of the United States.
The one thing that to this day still irritates me about the entire situation was there was one thing that the courts could have weighed in on that they refused to.
Sure.
And that was the change in election laws extra legislatively.
Mm-hmm.
And it clearly states in the Constitution that the legislatures decide how elections are handled in the states.
Yep.
And some of them, like Pennsylvania, for example, they didn't do that. They changed it without going through the legislature. And that alone could be looked at as shenanigans.
And the Supreme Court could have taken that up, right?
Yeah, and they didn't. So now we're sitting here wondering, well, is this okay or is this not okay?
Sure. And I'm not saying that we can't wonder whether that was okay. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have launched those challenges. I think, that's fair. But we have a legal process, and the court said, nope, we're not taking it up. That's back on the state to figure it out. Sue, you figure it out, whether this was done in an inappropriate manner, whether the Secretary of State abused discretion. That's a legal process. And my sense is I'm not questioning that any of that should have been launched, that we were right to raise those questions. I'm simply telling you what I think. I'm not telling you you can't believe differently. Anybody that says the election is stolen, okay. I'm
not going to say the election was stolen because I just don't see enough evidence of anything having happened to the degree it would need to.
Yes.
But I want somebody to tell me that what Pennsylvania did was okay. Yeah. And they won't do that.
And frankly, that was sort of a judicial proceeding where the state's saying, inside Pennsylvania saying, we had a process, this is okay because it was upheld in the process. Those process things don't mean it's okay or that we have to be like, that's fine. It's just that we decided
But that's the very thing that leaves it as a gray area where you're just going, I'd like some certainty here.
And I totally respect that. And I think the process has to matter in saying, I don't like the outcome. I would have loved the Supreme Court to pick it up and definitively answer it, but they didn't. But that's the process.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, is I don't feel there was an outcome. It's just still up in the air, and we're wondering.
Yeah.
If somebody had said, look, hey, we looked at this, and this is fine. You guys need to shut up. I'd be like, well, okay, we had a ruling.
Yeah. And the process was indeed exhausted. There's still some things ongoing. I don't see it like you. I don't see it rise to that level. Again, I'm not yelling at anybody for their perspective. What I see on the Super Talk text line, and I've heard from a lot of you, whenever I say that, whenever any host or anybody takes that position, is you're a freaking idiot. I can't even believe that you would believe that thing. Okay, fine. I'm not calling you an idiot for disagreeing with me. The idea that I can't believe what I believe is, I'm pretty sure it's the Democrats who are like, we're going to tell you what to believe and what's acceptable, and this is the orthodoxy. I know that, 60% of the Republican Party says that it was stolen. I'm in the 40% that says, I don't see it. I think that we have to be able to have a discussion there and have the back and forth and talk about what it means, without calling each other names and going after each other. We're better than that. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt as he's off gambling, cavorting, and having a good time. I think we've got some consensus here that's actually pretty solid. So some people say the 2020 election was stolen. I say it was certainly not regular, not stolen. What I'm seeing is that almost everybody who's called in, texted in, or has joined in this conversation is saying, yeah, either way, the solution here, if there is a solution, is to go win elections. And we must do that. I agree. I think that's the right answer, is to move forward. I think the mistake is staying in the past. Because either we need to have a revolution, which I just don't see a lot of y'all saying that we need to have a revolution. I'm not seeing it. I can look at it. Bell can see the same thing I can see. A lot of folks feel the election wasn't on the up and up. A lot of people feel the 2020 election had a lot of problems. That's perfectly fair. I'm not arguing with you. I think what we're talking about is the path forward and what we need to do and how we need to do it. And I think it's to win elections. I think it has to be. And the idea that there's no way Trump can win, yeah, there is. There absolutely is. You know why? Because Joe Biden's been terrible on the immigration. Inflation's through the roof. And those are issues that drive voting. We're seeing that. On swing states, it's close, but Trump's actually up. I'm not saying Trump's going to win, but he's certainly competitive and can definitely do it. And I can't get in this, like, we have no option here, that we can't trust the vote. We're not going to have a revolution. We're just going to sit there and be mad. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I think that's a bad idea. And I hate to say it, but if we believe that our if our republic is over because our elections are illegitimate, that we no longer have a voice, that's what our founders started a revolution over. And so that's why I'm confused if folks are saying, Pat, I see you on the Super Talk text line. We can't trust the vote. Wake up. I am awake. I've been awake since 7. What I'm asking you to explain to me is, well, our options are either revolution or using the process. That's the options. We can either respect our Constitution and say, hey, the states decide how they want to hold their elections, and they're perfectly capable of doing that, just like we are, or we start a revolution. I mean, we can go either way, but what I can't get behind is this notion that we should just sit here and be mad, or that everything's all bad. Like, it doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be. I still believe my vote matters. I believe that I can very much. I've literally done it. You guys have done it on this show. My voice can carry to the Tennessee legislature and help influence law. We can do that, right? And so I'm optimistic. I've got 4 boys in my house right now. I can't be a pessimist and say it's all over. I'm sorry. I hate it for those of you who think America's done. The best days are behind us and we don't have a future. Because I'm going to fight for one. Because I think that's really important. And I think most of y'all do too. And I'm glad about that. But with respect to the 2020 election, with respect to this election, we can't just be mad. We got to do something. It's either vote or fight. And I'm talking fight, like revolution. And I think the answer is we must use that process. We must insist that that process is held up there. And we've got to trust that other people around the country want the same thing we do, or America's done anyway. And I think they do. And I think we just disagree about some of that stuff. And I know people get upset. And where I make a mistake is when I try to tell you, here's what I think, and you must believe it. And no, I mean, you can disagree. I'm going to ask you questions because I want to know. But we got to, I think that's where I mess up. And a lot of people mess up because they say, I'm the righteous one and my perspective's right and yours is wrong, and I can't believe you're an idiot if you disagree with me. I don't think you're idiots. I hope you don't think I'm an idiot. We got to be able to disagree and then figure out how we move forward, because guess what? If you're here listening to the sound of my voice, almost all of you are conservative. You want limited government, free markets, individual responsibility, the rule of law. You want to be able to speak and worship as you please. You don't want somebody showing up your door telling you how you got to live your life. I know that. You know that. But when we get caught up in, hey, we're not agitating for that, we're just agitated, I'm not going to sit there and be that way. And I got a text on the Super Talk text line from a Tennessee elected official who said that our machines are not connected to the internet. They don't even have capacity to connect to the internet, and they don't have a modem. That reflects what I've seen. You want to know the voting machine that I see in Nolensville? And I can't speak for all the other ones, but I can speak for the ones in Nolensville. They are plugged into a power outlet. That's it. There are no other wires or cords. And yes, I understand there could be Wi-Fi and all this. I don't see it. I just don't. And so I think that, to me, is a good sign that our elections are free in Tennessee, that we can rely on them. And I got to imagine if I'm in Georgia or I'm in Colorado or even California, I'd pitch a fit if I thought that it wasn't free and fair. I would say, what are you doing? And I would want to know, because we can't have that. And I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm not telling you can't have your perspective. I'm just asking, what do we do going forward? And on the Super Talk text line said, I don't understand how Trump isn't up double digits in all but the bluest states, but how awful things are. I think we're seeing that Trump's actually doing well. If you want to know the truth, I think that if it wasn't Trump, if we had a different candidate there, they would be up more. Trump carries a lot of baggage. He likes to punch and start fights, and a lot of the elections decided by swing voters who don't like that kind of stuff. But you know what they like less? A loaf of bread being $10. They don't like the inflation. They don't like the out of control immigration. And that's why Trump's doing as well as he's doing, is because Biden is awful as a candidate. And Pat, I hear you on the Super Talk text line that Tennessee elections are not the problem. Well, flip it on its head. What if somebody in Colorado said, the Tennessee elections are the problem? Democrats don't actually have a fair voice there. And, as a Coloradan, I want to make sure that we have a one-size-fits-all federal regulation that ensures that Tennessee doesn't have control over their elections. We would lose our minds. And that's where I am going to constantly and consistently advocate for limited federal government. I do not want the federal government telling everybody what they need to do. I don't want them telling the states what to do or how they run their elections. I trust people who are my fellow Americans to figure out how to run elections in their jurisdictions. That's how that works. That's called federalism. That's why we have the system that we do, is because not everything needs to be a federal decision. What happens is when we see something, we don't like the outcome, we don't like the result, we don't like the policy, whatever, we say, you know what I could do? I could go to Washington and get them to do a one-size-fits-all, and then the thing that I like, I could have everywhere. And I reject that. Most things should not be decided by the federal government, even if they're things I like. Because when that's a playground, we get the Department of Education telling everybody how they got to educate kids in the states. We get all kinds of strange regulations and things that are coming because it's not government that's closest to the people. And so I don't want Washington to decide many things. I've been up there. I've sat in those halls. I've seen the swamp firsthand, and I am not supportive. I don't think it's a good idea for those folks to get most of the decisions, because you know what I know? Is that the biggest groups up in Washington, D.C. are politicians and lobbyists. down here in Tennessee, these are citizen lawmakers that go about their day most of the time. They're in our communities most of the time. And so I got a lot more clout there than I'm going to ever have against a well-heeled lobbyist who's in the ear of the person that I sent there who's not near me most of the time. That's just the truth. So I understand that we like things in Tennessee. I very much do. I'm a huge fan of the way we do things here. I love not having an income tax. I think we've been so smart on so many things from a policy standpoint. I just think we got to be real careful about empowering the federal government. That is our Achilles heel. Anytime we don't like something, it's run to the federal government. In the Bible, they talk about you shouldn't have gone to Egypt for help. Like, don't go to the federal government for help because it always comes with conditions and strings attached. It is always, there's something there. I don't know whether it's the swamp, the air, the water, what it is, but there's something there that's, oh, you didn't notice this. You didn't notice that condition. We need to keep it right here in Tennessee. In the volunteer state, most of the things need to be decided here, which by extension means Hollyweird and everything that's out on the West Coast. You know what? California gets to decide its stuff too, and we may disagree with it, but that's federalism. We just don't need to have the one-size-fits-all. It's a bad idea, and we should stop it. A couple things I want to get to real quick before we close up. We got the taxes out there. The Tax Foundation does a lot of tax figures. Now, these are final data for, I think, 2021. 153.6 million returns. My favorite thing, these are always fun figures to look at. You know what the cutoff for the top 10% is? $169,800. That puts you make more than that, you're in the top 10%. Top 1%, the cutoff, $682,577.
To tell you the top 20?
Top 25. If you're in the top 25% of Americans with your income's $94,440. And what's crazy, this is my favorite. You know how that you need to pay your fair share, Bell?
Yeah. I hear that a lot.
The bottom 50% pay 3.3% as their average federal income tax rate. The top 1%, any guesses? What percentage?
29.
25.9.
Oh.
So top 1% pay 25.9% of their income in taxes.
Well, that's not enough. That's not their fair share.
Bottom 50%, half the country, 3.3% of their income. So pay your fair share, right?
Does it tell you what the percentage of total income tax is that the 1% paid?
I've got it. I'd have to pull the figures.
I know like 2 years ago, it was like the 1% paid 43% of the entire income tax collected.
Yeah. I mean, here it is. Half of taxpayers paid 97.7% of federal income taxes. So it is basically the top 5% of income tax or of wage earners or earners in the country pay a huge percentage of the federal income tax. It looks like,
and the closer you get to the higher the percentage, the more they pay.
Right. And that's what Democrats don't ever tell you is it's like pay your fair share. It's just like this magical thing. But if you actually look at the data, it's wild. These are 2021 numbers, but the share of total income taxes paid, 1%, top 1% paid 45.8%. The top 5% to 1% paid 19.9%. The top 10 to 5% paid 10.2%. The bottom 50%, 2.3%. So
and I wonder how many people ended up not paying in but getting money back due to credits.
Huh. It's interesting. I'm just saying, as taxes are there, don't let anybody tell you, I don't like our tax system. We need to reform it. We need to do all kinds of things. But this notion that the 1% isn't paying the fair share, I'm not sure about that. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.